This is my brief examination of the white paper submitted by the Community Growth Committee to the District 303 Board of Education. Here I hope to briefly go over some of the data provided and show that the committee is focusing on the wrong data to forecast future enrollment. To start things off, the district brought in Dr. Charles Coffrin. Dr. Coffrin is a demographics and statistical data processing consultant. He's been brought in by the district for the past decade to assist with enrollment projections. These are his projections from his 2015 report. Now, Dr. Coffrin supplies a high, low, mid, and a snapshot projection. Now, the white paper touts Dr. Coffrin's 3-year accuracy to have been previously within 2% of his projections. And this is true, but those statistics relate to his mid and snapshot series. His high and low series tend to be between 10 to 20% off after 3 years. One of the important things to take from this data is that Dr. Coffrin, again, the expert hired by the district, does not generally use his high or low projections for long-term predictions. I can only assume this is due to the high error that I just mentioned. The Growth Committee wanted to make a 10-year prediction, however, something even their expert does not even do, and something the committee themselves emphasizes is extremely difficult. This being said, the committee decided to use Dr. Coffrin's mid and low series as their two extremes. Right away, this presents major problems. The low series shows that large error, and then to base another 5 years off this data would result in even larger error. Here, I wanted to show Dr. Coffrin's previous work for District 303. This graph is a combination of the previous two projections that Dr. Coffrin made for District 303 back in 2009 and 2012. That'd be why the reason you see the large bump on the high and low series in the 2012-2013 year. I was able to overlap the actual enrollment numbers on this as well. What can be seen here is that the high and low series are definitely not data that should even be considered in making predictions. They're so far away that can't even be considered accurate. The mid and snapshot series, though, are much closer, much more accurate. And of course, these are the series that they tout the 2% accuracy levels on. But even then, you can still see that his numbers do start to vary greatly from where our actual enrollment numbers are. Now this is a closer look at how accurate the projections are. The high and low series start ballooning in their inaccuracies after just 2 years. Now remember, the committee is actually basing their low projections on a low series. Can it really be trusted when we are seeing these historically inaccuracies in this series? Now let's just narrow it down a little to the two higher accuracy series, the mid and snapshot. This last one being one that was actually disregarded by the committee. Removing the high and low series from Dr. Coffrin's report makes it easier to see how the enrollment projections actually decrease in accuracy as they progress away from the year that they are made. If we carry this trend out an additional 5 years, it could be easily concluded that the accuracy would be very poor for a 10-year projection. This is something most people would not be comfortable with using to make important decisions. Now moving back to the Growth Committee. Again, they decided to make enrollment projections for 10 years. To do this, they used Dr. Coffrin's mid and low data set, or what they refer to as their high and low set. And here we see their enrollment projections actually level off for 5 years that the committee added onto the original data. This is what they call their original model. Now the committee also developed their own model, which they call the alternative model. This model shows a continuing downward trend in enrollment numbers. So what did the committee do base their models on to produce these numbers? For the original model, the Growth Committee decided to take the projections and extend them using rolling averages. Now one major disadvantage for using a rolling average is it will not reflect any possible future changes. Also, because these are straight rolling averages and are not weighted in any way, they quickly reach a plateau and then don't move. Now for the alternative model, the committee decided to use the CSR method, which is the cohort survival ratio method. Now this is a growth ratio. Basically, if it is over 1, then you're growing. The higher it is, the more growth that is expected. So Dr. Coffrin, remember the district hired professional, projects a CSR of 1.25. The committee now determined that this was too high, so they decided to use the 2008 value of 1.07. So in basic terms, the committee preferred a growth of 7% and not 25%. And why choose 2008? That was the peak of the recession and everything was low. Birth rates, employment levels, housing developments, and new home purchases. That, of course, is not reflective of today's economy, but would be good if you wanted to show a dramatic enrollment decrease. Now, some additional assumptions that were made by the committee were that all house development projections were pushed to their extreme dates. This basically removes any chance for them to be considered in the data. Additionally, any enrollment numbers that may come from these new developments were spread out over 5 years after the development's final completion date. This seems a little extreme as most housing developments are completed in phases and could be occupied much earlier and provide enrollment-age children much earlier as well. The committee also makes the assumption that the community is aging in place due to an uptick in remodeling permits. They dub these people empty nesters and people not upgrading their homes. But with the economy improving ever since 2008, I believe it would be safe to assume a larger portion of these remodels are people preparing to sell their homes or improving them for more comfortable living while their children become school age and enroll in the district. So what are the trends of today really looking like? According to the U.S. Census, the population is increasing in St. Charles at a rate of 3 times that of the state of Illinois, 1.3% versus 0.4%. And according to Dr. Cofford's projection, he expects the population of children under the age of 6 to increase by 2% in 5 years. And he even expects the population of children under the age of 1 to increase by 3%. This really looks like increasing future class sizes. Additionally, the birth rates are on a rise again. True, birth rates have decreased in the district since 2009, but we are now starting to see an increase. Finally, another trend we are seeing is that the price of housing is increasing as well. Looking at the prices of housing starting back in 2008, we see a drastic drop, but these prices again are starting to grow. It's very interesting though too how this data looks similar to previous data set I showed you. Simply overlaying the district's live birth rates over the housing prices, we can see a pretty straightforward correlation. Following this correlation, it would not be a large jump to assume that birth rates will continue to increase, which then will lead to increased enrollment at the schools. In conclusion, we see the population is increasing, birth rates are on the rise, the economy is recovering, and the housing index is increasing. Does this translate to a lower enrollment for our schools? No. Certainly we're going to see lower numbers for a few years, but as everything recovers, these numbers will increase again. Remember, it takes 5 to 6 years before we see the birth rates translate into enrollment. So that must mean we need to shut our schools. Wrong again. Of course we need to keep these schools open and prepare them for future demands. We need to focus on preparing them for the needs of the children in our community. So I urge you to vote for option 1. Please take a step back and look at the overall picture. Let's not rush to any decisions based on misrepresented data.